In the golden streets of Florence, where music floated through old cafes and sunsets painted the sky orange over the river, lived a young man named Lorenzo Bellini. People admired Lorenzo everywhere he went. Not because he was rich, not because he was famous, but because sadness lived quietly inside his eyes. The kind of sadness that comes from loving too deeply. Lorenzo grew up in a poor neighborhood near the edge of the city with his father, a tired shoemaker who worked day and night fixing old leather shoes for tourists. Life was never easy. Some nights they ate only bread and soup. Some winters the apartment became so cold they slept wearing coats. But Lorenzo still dreamed. He dreamed of becoming an architect someday and building beautiful things the world would remember. And beside every dream, there was always one girl, Giulia Romano. Giulia lived across the street from him since childhood. She had long dark hair, soft brown eyes, and the kind of smile that made even broken people feel safe. When they were teenagers, they would sit together near the river at night, sharing cheap ice cream, while talking about the future. "One day," Giulia whispered once, "you'll build beautiful homes all over Italy." Lorenzo laughed softly. "And you?" "I just want a small, peaceful life." "With who?" She looked at him quietly. "With you." And under the moonlight of Florence, Lorenzo kissed her for the first time. Years passed. Love grew slowly between them like spring flowers after winter. Giulia stayed beside him through every struggle. When Lorenzo failed university exams, she encouraged him. When his father became sick, she helped care for him. When Lorenzo wanted to give up on his dreams, Giulia held his hands and said, "You were born for something bigger." She believed in him before the world ever did. And Lorenzo promised himself he would marry her someday. At 29, Lorenzo finally received an opportunity that changed his life. A famous architecture company in Milan offered him a position. The salary was unbelievable. The future suddenly looked bright. But there was one problem. Giulia could not leave Florence because her mother was seriously ill. The night before Lorenzo left, they stood together beside the river, crying quietly. "This won't change us," Giulia whispered. "Never," Lorenzo promised. But distance changes people slowly, like rain slowly breaking stone. In Milan, everything felt different. The city moved faster. People dressed better. Dreams felt bigger. And loneliness became heavier. Lorenzo spent most nights working late inside enormous glass buildings filled with wealthy businessmen and elegant strangers. That was where he met Sofia Moretti. Sofia was unlike anyone he had ever known. Confident, beautiful, wild. She wore red dresses, spoke fearlessly, and laughed like she had never been hurt before. The first time they met, Lorenzo accidentally spilled coffee on important design papers during a stressful meeting. Everyone became angry, but Sofia laughed. "Relax," she smiled. "No one dies from coffee." That small moment stayed inside his mind. Weeks became months. Sofia and Lorenzo worked together constantly. She understood his passion for architecture. She challenged him, inspired him, made him laugh during hard days. Sometimes after work, they walked to the glowing streets of Milan, eating pizza near the canals while live violin music echoed from nearby restaurants. One cold evening, Sofia asked him softly, "Is there someone waiting for you back home?" Lorenzo immediately thought about Giulia, her smile, her loyalty, her love. "Yes," he answered quietly. Sofia nodded slowly, though sadness briefly crossed her face. "You love her?" "I do." But even while saying those words, his heart felt confused. Back in Florence, Giulia waited patiently. She called every night, asked about his work, told him stories about her mother getting better, spoke about wedding ideas for the future. But Lorenzo slowly became distant without realizing it. Not because he stopped loving Giulia, but because another feeling had entered his heart, and he hated himself for it. One rainy night in Milan, Lorenzo and Sofia stayed late alone in the office, finishing a project. Thunder shook the windows while music played softly from Sofia's phone. She looked exhausted. "So did he? You worked too hard," she whispered. "So do you?" She smiled softly. "Maybe we're both running from something." Their eyes met, and suddenly the room became silent, dangerously silent. Lorenzo stepped back immediately. "This is wrong." Sofia looked hurt. "I know. But emotions do not disappear just because people call them wrong." After that night, everything changed. Lorenzo tried avoiding her, but absence only made his feelings stronger. Meanwhile, Giulia continued loving him faithfully from afar, unaware her place inside his heart was slowly being shared. One weekend, Giulia surprised Lorenzo by visiting Milan. The moment she arrived at the train station and hugged him tightly, guilt nearly crushed him alive. "You look tired," she said gently. "Work." But Giulia noticed something else too. Distance. Silence. A sadness she could not explain. That evening, Lorenzo took her to a restaurant near the city center. And fate chose that exact moment to be cruel. Sofia entered the restaurant with friends. Her eyes immediately found Lorenzo. Then Giulia. The world stopped. Giulia noticed the way Sofia looked at him. Women understand certain things without words. And in that single moment, her heart quietly began breaking. Later that night inside Lorenzo's apartment, Giulia finally asked, "Who is she?" Lorenzo froze. "A co-worker." "That's not what I mean." Silence filled the room. Giulia's eyes slowly filled with tears. "Do you love her?" Lorenzo wanted to lie. He wanted to protect her. But truth already lived between them. "I don't know." Giulia looked shattered. "That means yes." "No, Giulia, I still love you." Still. The word destroyed him, because she understood immediately. His love was no longer only hers. Giulia cried harder than Lorenzo had ever seen before. Not angry tears. Heartbroken ones. "I waited for you," she whispered. "I believed in you when you had nothing." Lorenzo fell to his knees beside her. "I never wanted this to happen. But it did." Her voice trembled painfully. "Was I not enough?" Lorenzo held her hands desperately. "You were everything." "Then why does your heart belong somewhere else too?" He had no answer. Because sometimes human hearts become complicated in terrible ways. The next morning, Giulia left Milan before sunrise. Lorenzo chased her to the train station, breathing heavily through the crowd. "Giulia." She turned slowly, tears falling silently. For a moment he thought she would run back into his arms. Instead, she whispered, "I hope someday you understand how deeply I loved you." Then the train doors closed between them, and Lorenzo watched the love of his life disappear. After Giulia left, Lorenzo tried building a future with Sofia. At first it felt beautiful, passionate, alive. They traveled together across Italy, spent summers near the coast of Venice, watched sunsets in Rome, laughed together in tiny cafes. But guilt followed Lorenzo everywhere, even during happy moments. Sofia noticed it more every day. One night she finally asked, "If Julia called right now and asked you to come back, would you go?" Lorenzo stayed silent, and silence became the answer. Sofia smiled sadly while tears filled her eyes. "I knew it." Months later, she ended their relationship quietly. No screaming, no hatred, only sadness. "You love me," Sofia whispered softly, "but part of your soul still belongs to her." Then she kissed his cheek one final time and walked away. Years passed. Lorenzo became wealthy and famous. His buildings appeared in magazines across Italy. People admired his success, but inside, loneliness remained. One autumn evening, he returned to Florence for the first time in years. The city still smelled like rain and old stone streets. As he walked beside the river at sunset, he saw Giulia again. Older now, more mature, still beautiful. She stood quietly feeding birds near the water. When their eyes met, time itself seemed to stop. "Lorenzo," she whispered softly. They spoke for hours that evening. About life, pain, dreams, lost years. Giulia eventually married once, but it ended quietly. Sofia had moved abroad to become an artist, and Lorenzo, he never truly stopped loving both of them. Before leaving, Giulia looked at him carefully. "You know what hurt the most?" Lorenzo lowered his eyes. "What?" "That you truly loved me." A tear rolled down his face. "Because if you didn't, forgetting you would have been easier." Then she walked away slowly into the golden Florence sunset. And Lorenzo finally understood something heartbreaking. Sometimes love is not cruel because it disappears. Sometimes love is cruel because it stays. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Your support means everything and helps bring more emotional stories to life. See you in the next story.